Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Welcome in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, right here on the GSMC Podcast Network. It is your host, Brice Lewis, back again to talk about everything basketball that's happening. And obviously, guys, we know what this is about. The NBA season has officially ended, and we now have crowned a new NBA champion. And your champion for this year are the 2020 Los Angeles Lakers, beating the Miami Heat in Game 6, 106-93. LeBron winning his 4th championship and 4th Finals MVP. So obviously that's going to be what we start with. But to also give you an idea of what we're going to talk about for the rest of the show, obviously we're going to talk about the Heat going forward. We're going to talk about potential title contenders for next year. And we're also going to talk about certain guys that could make some changes this offseason. We're going to talk about all that here on the podcast. But like I said, we're going to get into it. The Lakers are your new champions. Coming out yesterday, basically destroying the Heat from minute one. Even though it was a 13-point defeat, they were basically up 30 by halftime. It was not a great performance. But you heard it here first, folks. The Lakers, LeBron James, have completed the mission. They've completed the job. They won it for Kobe. They've anything, any story that you said that the Lakers are trying to accomplish, they accomplished last night. They were able to get the win. They were able to get the victory. And so now, obviously, we have to talk about the legacy of LeBron. A lot of people have been very critical of this ring for LeBron, saying that he doesn't deserve this ring, or his ring is tainted. I'll say that. It's tainted because he, quote-unquote, avoided the best teams, and he played a 5 seed. And some people are going to criticize the fact that he let him get to 6 games. And honestly, I just know there's a bunch of LeBron haters out there. There's a bunch of people who believe Jordan is the GOAT. So they're going to do anything they can to lower or reduce or diminish his accomplishments. It's kind of a crazy situation. I think this ring is just as valuable as the other 3. Because at the end of the day, he could have been that team that lost to a team they weren't supposed to. They played like they were supposed to. They were the favorites, they were the better team, and they accomplished the job. For some reason, we're trying to criticize LeBron for not facing a team that has the exact same or not more talent than him. We criticized him for losing to Golden State with Kevin Durant, even though we knew they were head and shoulders a better team than LeBron's teams. But since he's in the GOAT argument, they're going to look at that as a blow towards LeBron, swearing if Michael Jordan was in that position, he would have beat the Golden State Warriors. Even though if you were a real basketball expert, you know that wouldn't have happened. LeBron has been the favorite 3 times in his career. Now he's 2-1 in those series that he was favored in the finals. LeBron has had a great playoffs at age 37, still seeming like he's still in his prime, still playing at a high level, still playing efficiently. We also have to give credit to the rest of the Lakers. Anthony Davis, obviously, he also helped carry this team. They both have been great. They both were great. Anthony Davis dealing with some injuries, but still fought through all of it. And he played well. Everybody knew if Anthony Davis played the way Anthony Davis can play, They are a true title contender and could beat any team in this league. What did we have questions about with Anthony Davis? His inconsistency. Well, he wasn't inconsistent this time around. He played the way Anthony Davis knew how to play, and they were able to get through all the games. All the games they really lost in the playoffs was when Anthony Davis had an off game. But think about it, that was only one game a series. So the other 4, he was on it, and they were undefeated, basically. And so, you got to give credit to Anthony Davis getting his first championship. And you were hearing LeBron talk about it when talking about his finals MVP. He was at a point in Cleveland where he wasn't winning. 7 years, couldn't get over the hump. Needed something to push him. Needed that guidance. Went to Miami, and Dwayne Wade helped him. And now he became a champion. And he's saying, I'm doing the same thing for Anthony now. 7 years in New Orleans, couldn't get over the hump. Needed something to push him. Needed something to help him. He came to the Lakers. And now he's a champion. So this is obviously great for LeBron. Great for Anthony Davis. Great for the rest of the Lakers. Dwight Howard played a pivotal role in everything they did. He played very well. Phil McGee, Danny Green. Remember, Danny Green was getting criticized heavily after missing that game-winning shot in Game 5. But bounced back. Also, we got to talk about Caruso. Listen, statistically, he may not look like he did much. But we all know Caruso's effort, his energy, and that one highlight dunk a game does a lot for this team. And that's why he deserved this. Caldwell Pope has had a great playoffs. Never forget, at the start of this season, we were criticizing Caldwell Pope. We thought Caldwell Pope should have been traded, released, because Caldwell Pope was not playing well at all to start this season. Everyone was calling for Caldwell Pope to be gone. But the Lakers stuck with him. Frank Vogel stuck with him. And in two of the biggest series of the year, in the Western Conference Finals and the Finals, he's had his 2 best series. Rondo got hurt at the start of the bubble. Rondo, honestly, wasn't making that big of an impact on the Lakers during the regular season. Some people wondered if it was even a good idea to play Rondo. Did he fit with this team? He wasn't doing what they thought he would have did. But then the bubble started, then he got hurt, and he didn't come back to the playoffs. But when Rondo did return, he looked like what they like to call him, playoff Rondo. Played well, ran the team, ran the offense, was making plays. And one thing I think really took Rondo and really put him over the top was the fact that he was making shots. Rondo was hitting clutch baskets, and that is what really nobody talks about. Remember, Rondo was a guy who you could leave open, and he'll miss a lot of those shots, and really could maybe give you about 8-9 points a game. In these playoffs, he was averaging over 40% from 3. You never thought you would ever hear Rajon Rondo being a 40% 3-point shooter. Especially based off how his whole career has gone. Especially in this last game, he went 8 of 11, 3 of 4 from 3, and 19 points. If you're getting that type of a production from Rajon Rondo with the type of playmaking that he possesses, you're going to win a lot of those ball games. Kuzma getting his first championship. Young player, young guy, inconsistent, had to change his role. A lot of people don't realize Kuzma had to change his game to play with Anthony Davis in this new team. Remember, with the Lakers last year, he was more in a prominent role to score and be a scorer. Getting 15, 16 a game, and kind of, even though and playing the way he knew how to play. This year, he came off the bench. He had to learn how to play with reduced minutes. At first, he struggled. He was jacking up shots. He was trying to get his shot attempts to get his point average. Because Kuzma knows he wants to get paid when he gets a free agent. But he also had to learn to play off the ball. He had to learn to, increase his basketball IQ and now make plays for other teammates instead of himself. Now listen, there are still times where Kuzma has those bonehead just mistakes, those lacks on defense and everything, but he's a young guy. He's improving, and he's won a championship, and this is an experience that no one can ever take away from him. He was the guy who was left out of that core between Brandon Ingram, him, Josh Hart, Lonzo, and now he's the one with the championship. Markieff Morris, the older brother of Marcus Morris. You know, they brought him in from Detroit because they needed that stretch big. A guy who could defend and basically just be that extra guy off the bench. He's had a great playoffs. He's had some great games. He's done everything that they've wanted him to do, needed him to do, and etc. He has been what they brought him in to do. And one thing about this Lakers team, before I continue on, is that everybody on this team had a role. They had an identity. They had they knew what they were supposed to do. This was your job, and this is what you do. And every player had that. And that simplified role is what I think helped every player on this team maximize their potential. I feel like the Lakers, and Frank Vogel deserves a lot of credit, has maximized all the players that he's had on his team. Like I said, with Dwight, remember, all they told him to do, Dwight, all we want you to do is block shots and rebound. Literally. You don't even have to give us a point. Just block shots and rebound. And anything else is extra. It's crazy. You know, and like I said, Frank Vogel deserves a lot of credit. He made, every time the Lakers lost the game, he would make adjustments to make sure that wouldn't happen again. That's great coaching. You know, there's some coaches who will lose a game, make some tiny adjustments, but not anything major, and still allow the same thing that beat him in game 3 or 2, beat him in game 4. Frank Vogel, every time, if James Harden had a big game, they double teamed the next game. If Damian Lillard had a big game, they would double team him as soon as he crossed half court. Jimmy Butler was exhausted last game. They attacked him as soon as he crossed half court. They saw things. Frank Vogel saw things, and then he said, we're going to execute this. That's something that shows great coaching. Remember, a lot of people thought like Frank Vogel was just an okay hire, like, oh, he's the best they could get that was available. And that Jason Kidd was eventually going to become the head coach and da-da-da-da. Remember all that. But we cannot sit here and not talk about the coaching job that Frank Vogel has had this season. He put the Lakers in points of success, within schemes, within adjustments being made to present them with the best opportunity game in and game out to win. And, you know, usually I always like to say LeBron doesn't really get along with a lot of his coaches, or he has that relationship where he listens to their coaches because, you know, he gives his feedback. But I have a very strong feeling I think LeBron James listened to Frank Vogel. When Frank Vogel said, hey, we're making this change, he was like, okay. I think that relationship between him and LeBron has grown this year. And even though you don't see anybody going out here talk about their job Frank Vogel has done, I just want to say he's done a great job. And this entire Lakers team are very deserving to be our 2020 NBA champions. So congratulations to the Los Angeles Lakers for another great year, tying the Boston Celtics, their hated rival, for the most championships ever by a franchise. But that's all the time we have here on this segment. Coming up next, we're going to get into the Heat. What is the future looking like for the Heat and potential title contenders? All that right here and more on the podcast. Football, basketball, and baseball are all back, and that means it's time to get down your bets. This is Brice Lewis here to tell you about my favorite sports book, and that's BetUS. I only endorse one sports book, and that's BetUS.com. Why you ask? BetUS is the pioneer in online betting with more than 25 years in the biz. You need a sports book with integrity and longevity, and you need to know that you're going to get paid. Live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, entertainment, and all kinds of crazy prop bets and futures. They have it all. Nobody in the industry gives bigger bonuses than BetUS. Go to BetUS.com now and fill out your information. It only takes a minute. When you get to How Did You Hear About Us box, type in GSMC, and you can get up to 150% in bonuses on your first deposit. Nobody beats that. I bet at BetUS, and so should you. Join BetUS today, and don't forget to type in GSMC and get up to 150% bonus on your first deposit. That's BetUS.com, America's favorite sportsbook.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the Los Angeles Lakers winning the 2020 NBA championship, being our new champions of the year. LeBron James getting his fourth championship, his fourth Finals MVP. Anthony Davis getting his first ring. And really, I just broke down every player that really contributed to this Lakers team, the stories behind each player, and the impact that this will have. And just, obviously a lot of people are happy today. A lot of people are excited today. LA was I heard was extremely lit last night. Was very, very popping, as they say. And so obviously it's I know they're happy tying the Boston Celtics for the most championships in franchise history in a franchise. So all of that just great. But now we have to shift to the losing team. But a team that has a lot to look forward to. Miami Heat, team was not projected to be here. 5th seed. They beat a good Indiana team. They basically dismantled the number 1 seed and the MVP/Defensive Player of the Year. And they beat a very talented Boston team, who you could say Jason Tatum was the best player on the floor in that series. So Jimmy Butler wasn't even the best player in that series. And they beat them all. And so what's next for the Heat? Well, Jimmy Butler said after the game, he told Eric, listen, I'm bringing you guys a championship. I said I was. So I hold to my promises. And so for me, thinking about everything that's happening, thinking about what's happening with the team and the perspectives of everything that's coming into it, I just think that it truly shows. It truly does show that, the team has done a lot. And Jimmy wants to bring them a championship. So he says next year he's going to have to bring them a championship. And realistically, if you look at this team, yes, the Eastern Conference is getting tougher next year. It will be much tougher next year. But who says that the Heat can't make it back? Jimmy Butler, we've seen one of the best performances through an entire playoff and the NBA Finals by him. We've seen Tyler Hero grow in front of our eyes. Yes, he struggled in a few of the final games. He struggled. But listen, he's a 20-year-old player starting in the NBA Finals, the youngest player to ever play in the NBA Finals, going against probably the best team in basketball. Y'all make it sound like he was supposed to sit out here and drop 28, 30 a game on him. He wasn't even Rookie of the Year. He didn't even make all first team all rookie. But he makes big shots. He can make big shots. You've seen that all throughout the playoffs. Goran Dragic played in the last game, even though he was playing through that torn fascia. You have to commend him for willing to be playing through such a tough injury, willing to get back on the floor. Even if it didn't make an impact in the way they wanted to, the fact that he was able to play a game in this finals probably means the world to him. Just being able to make his finals appearance. So you cannot take that away from him. And maybe I don't know how much of a difference Goran Dragic would have made in this series. It could have. Obviously, you would think it would have taken some of the load off Jimmy having that other ball handler. So maybe it could have made a difference, but we'll never know. Bam Adebayo, remember, he's been banged up in this playoffs. Honestly, he was the only player who really had a great game yesterday. He had 25 plus and 10 rebounds. Obviously, Bam, he's the heart and soul of the Heat. He's a guy who, is their defensive anchor, can get to the rim, can do everything. And, he was, like I said, he was playing hurt. He was playing with a neck injury, shoulder. He was playing with a lot of different things. And he kept fighting. He kept playing because he knew how important this was for him. And he's only going to get better. I feel like Bam Adebayo at some point is going to actually add a three-point shot to his game. He can shoot it, but obviously, in terms of the NBA playing of games, he's not good enough to shoot the three yet. But he can shoot the three. He's probably working on it to where he can then even extend his range and become even more of a more dangerous offensive weapon when it's all said and done. Then we have Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder, he had a good season. They brought him in that trade. I believe with those guys and with Phil Winslow and everything. And, he's a guy who, he played well. He was a guy who he's probably one of the better 3-and-D players in the league. Obviously, he was off a little bit in the finals, but he could hit the three ball, play defense. Same thing with Andre Iguodala. Same thing. He was a veteran who's won a championship, gave him veteran experience. A guy who was good in the huddle, good in the locker room, who was a leader with Jimmy. We can't underestimate his impact that he could have on this team and what he's done. Kelly Olynyk, don't forget. He kind of was helping the offense when Dragic and Bam went down. Because he had to. Olynyk was not going to be much of a factor in this series because of the fact he couldn't defend AD or really anybody because he's a defensive liability. But he is a stretch center who can stretch the floor and drop 20 if he has to. Obviously, when Bam came back, they realized, okay, we do need somebody who can really go against Anthony Davis. And obviously, you saw Olynyk struggling at times, but he was one of the reasons why they were still even able to be even competitive in games without Bam and Dragic. So Duncan Robinson, the 3-point marksman, a 3-point specialist, a guy who, went to Michigan undrafted. Miami Heat so great at finding gems. Found him. Now he's, if not the best 3-point shooter, one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA. This man could shoot the lights out. So, definitely can play very well. And a guy who's going to be here for the long term. Obviously, he's not a 3-and-D kind of guy because the D part is lacking. Not the best defender. But obviously, I believe he tries. He wants to be better. May just have physical limitations, which sometimes that's sometimes how defense can be. You have physical limitations that keep you from being a great defender. But as long as you put the effort in and try, that's what's really going to count at the end of the day. And then you got guys, Derrick Jones Jr., obviously won the dunk contest this year. A guy who is an improving role player. He is a liability from the 3-point line, but I think he'll improve his 3-point shot. He'll need to be better with that. If they want to be able to play him more deeper into the playoffs, which I'm sure he wants to be a part of. Kendrick Nunn, remember, played well during the regular season, struggled in the playoffs, lost his bench positioning. Eric Spoelstra didn't play him for a couple of series because of how much he was struggling. Finals came in for Dragic, did an admirable job. played well. He played well. He did not seem like he was overwhelmed by the moment. And he played well for what they asked him and what they needed him to do. And so, again, that's something, you can't take away from him. That's something you can't take away from what he's been doing for this team. And then, circling it back around to Jimmy Butler. A guy who people wanted to label him as a problem child. He doesn't fit on any teams. Nobody can handle his personality. Some people may even call him selfish. And this year with the Miami Heat, he single-handedly showed the entire league, if you put me in a place that I want to be, with the people I want around me, I can be a guy who could get your team to the promised land. Which basically he did with the Heat. And that's something you can't take away from him. And so, he came into his organization. He wanted to go here. People question, why would he leave Philadelphia where he had Embiid and Simmons and people feel like he has best chance to win a championship? Why would he leave that for a team that barely makes it in as like maybe an 8th seed in the Heat? What made him think that was his ideal? He wants to be the man that bad that he'll go to a team that isn't even championship worthy, and he's not a player who can lift them to that point. And basically all he did was come out and prove the doubters wrong, prove the haters wrong. The final performance that he put up was one of the best finals performances you'll ever see in a losing effort. It would have been more iconic, obviously, if he had won with the type of performance he had. But like I said, in Game 6, he was shot. You could tell he was tired. Remember after Game 5, if you saw that video of him leaving after the the post game press, he was limping. He was tired. He was wore out. He was just too tired to really, give it his all again in games. Remember, really 2 games. Remember, Game 3, he had that big game. Game 4, he had another very crucial game. Game 5, he had, he really was doing everything he could 3 straight games. It had just caught up to him. It caught up to him. He was tired. He was wore out. You saw it from the beginning of the game. And he struggled. And so that's why I don't look at his performance and say it was too big for him. Sometimes you just hit that wall as a competitor. Playing as hard as you've played. Playing as hard as he's played. But every Heat fan knows. And if he didn't have if he didn't have your respect before, he has your respect now. Because he went out there against all odds, put the team on his back, and said, I'll do anything I can to get this team in position to win a championship. And that's all you want from your top player, your guy, the guy that you were giving to your franchise. Eric Spoelstra told him, Pat Riley told Eric Spoelstra, Eric, this is your guy. This is the guy who's going to get us there. He's gotten you to the promised land. Now, can he get you to the prize in the promised land? That's going to be the next question for the Heat. Now, I'm sure they're going to go into this. They're going to look at, okay, where do we need to improve? What needs to improve? What needs to be better? Remember, Pat Riley is a guy who always finds a way to make his team better. Eric Spoelstra always looking for a team to help his team improve. Because that's going to be the question. What can we do to help our team be better? What can we do to help our team reach expectations that we have set for this franchise because of the type of franchise that we are? And I think that that's something to me that really shows in the culture of Miami. Jimmy Butler fits that culture. And they have a lot of young talent that is only getting better. And this is honestly a great position to be in when you have a lot of young talent that can get better. Because it's not even like you have to make that many dramatic team changes. It's not like a veteran team where everybody's pretty much is what they are. And if you ain't making it, then it's not like one player can get better. I mean, yeah, you can maybe make some adjustments to your game to improve some things, but you'll never make that dramatic improvement a Tyler Hero can still make, a Bam and a Bio can still make. And so it'll be interesting to see what the Heat do next year, moving on into the next year when we get back to more of a regular 82-game stretch, and see what happens if they can repeat the success they had this year. But that's all the time we have here in the bubble. Coming up next, we're going to get into some more NBA news and topics right here on the GSMC Basketball Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we discussed the Miami Heat, their season review, and looking forward to the future of Miami, as they have a lot to look forward to. They have a lot of reasonings to keep their head up and to stay positive moving on forward, because they have a lot of young talent, a lot of talent that could be better, and could be back in a position to get back to the Eastern Conference Finals and the NBA Finals again next year. We don't know what's going to happen in Milwaukee. We got to see what happens with Brooklyn. We got to see what happens with all those teams. And so Miami has a lot to look forward to. Like I said, one good thing about them is they have a lot of young talent who is getting better. So they may not have to make too many changes next year. They just may expect more of an improvement from everybody across the board. And maybe that way they can get themselves back, and like I said, into title contention. But speaking of titles, I'm going to give a little early season preview of the top title contenders in my eyes next season, and bring up some teams who could be title contenders, discuss them right here in short periods, and discuss basically teams that you think can make it. And obviously we're going to start with the champion Lakers. Obviously, a lot of people have been saying this year that this year was LeBron's best chance to win a championship. And I think they're only saying that because outside of the Clippers, people felt like that was the only team who could compete with him. So if he got past the Clippers, he would win the championship. Where now next year you're getting a high-powered Golden State back. You're getting a fully healthy Portland team back. You know, Denver has made some strides. They could be really good next year. You know, we'll have to see what happens in Houston. But basically, the teams in the Western Conference are going to get better. And then whoever comes out of the Eastern Conference next year may be better than Miami Heat were this year. And so a lot of people are thinking next year LeBron's going to really struggle. And I've always wondered, why is that? Why do people feel like this was the best year? More likely than not, they're going to bring back their core. They're going to bring back AD and LeBron, clearly. So they're still going to have their two best players. I really, truly think, obviously, a lot of these guys are on one-year deals right now with the Lakers, but they're going to bring these guys back. I really do see them keeping Rondo. I see them, obviously, Kuzma's going to be there. You know, KCP, I think, is going to be there. Caruso's going to be there. I mean, I feel like they're going to bring back a lot of this roster. So, to me, I don't really see them falling off a cliff or anything next year. I think they're going to be just as competitive as they were this year. And listen, they're going to defend their title. I'm sure all these guys want to come back and try to defend their title. The Lakers are still going to be one of the best defensive teams in the NBA next year, regardless of what happens. And if they continue to execute the formula that's been working, they have the success to win again. They have a guy in the paint that's unstoppable, and you have LeBron who can beat you in the paint from the perimeter and every part of the floor, and beat you to his playmaking ability. So definitely to me, I think the Lakers just have just as good of a chance as they had this year to win the championship, to win it next year. And then we have the Clippers. Now, obviously, the Clippers basically did not reach expectations this year. Disappointing loss to Denver, giving up a 3-1 lead, having double-digit leads in all those games, it just didn't end well for the Clippers this year. But with that being said, they still have the talent to be a championship team. Obviously, they let go of head coach Doc Rivers, so they're currently looking for a head coach, looking for a guy to run the ship. Obviously, to me with the Clippers, I think next year they have to take the regular season more serious. They have to. They talk about chemistry. Well, unless injuries happen, if you're healthy, you need to play. And y'all need to try to get as many games together as much as possible to work out all the kinks, to work out all the issues, all the chemistry y'all say y'all don't have. So that way when the playoffs come around, it's not like, oh, this is our 15th game we played together this entire season going into the playoffs. We've played 60, 70 games together. We pretty much know, okay, this is what we're good at, this is what we don't good at. And obviously, if they believe the head coach was a problem, a guy who can make adjustments when needed. So I definitely expect the Clippers to be there next year. Obviously, I'm sure they're going to be, obviously a top team in the Western Conference again next year. I think everybody's still going to want that Clippers-Los Angeles matchup. So we're going to have to see if we get it next year. But I think the Clippers definitely have just as good of a chance as anybody else to get back to the championship picture. Another team, Golden State, like I said, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. That core has made it to the playoffs every year since Steve Kerr has taken over. If you excluded the Kevin Durant years, they've made 3 finals appearances with that core. So clearly they have a championship core. Now obviously, yes, Curry is a little bit older, and Klay is a little bit older, and Draymond's a little bit older. But I don't feel like their skills have diminished. And I think they're still going to be very disaffected. The biggest thing for Golden State, if they want to truly be a true team next year, obviously they want to add a superstar next year. Because obviously that would put them instantly in top title contender, if not the favorites. But if they don't add a superstar, they need to figure out how they want to fill out this roster. Remember, one of the reasons why the Golden State Warriors were so good when they first came onto the scene is because they had so much talent. You had Steph, Klay, and Draymond, your stars, but yet you still had one of the bestest benches in all of the NBA. You had guys who could still come in and keep the charge coming. And so right now the Warriors need to figure out how are we going to fill out this team where we can now play well from all levels. Now obviously they have a top 2 pick, so it'll be interesting to see if they take someone with that pick, if they can't trade the pick, and how they fill in. We forget they still have Andrew Wiggins. You can technically say they have 4 stars already. Not probably the higher end stars like a KD type of star, but they have 4 stars. You add a top 2 pick, probably Anthony Edwards, maybe James Wiseman, maybe. That's a pretty good lineup. Then you get you some guys from this year's team that maybe you thought like, oh, they could be a very big key part of our bench with all the experience and learning they've done this past year, even through the growing pains. Golden State's definitely a team to watch out for next year, for sure. The Brooklyn Nets, obviously with KD and Kyrie coming back, you can't sit here and say they're not a favorite. Now, their biggest issue is they're going to have to figure out the rest of the roster. More likely than not, you can't keep Chris LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie as well, and Joe Harris. So you have to figure out of those 3 players, because those are the 3 key players to me, who are you going to keep? If I'm the Nets, you clearly want to try to keep at least 2. Probably for me, I feel like you definitely have to keep Joe Harris. Because he's a guy who moves without the ball and can shoot the 3. And is one of the best 3-point shooting guards in the league. You need that sniper from the outside. But then you can only keep either Spencer Dinwiddie or Chris LeVert. You can't keep them both. Because they all need the ball in their hands. Kyrie and KD need the ball in their hands. You can't have this. You don't want to turn the offense to an ISO offense for everybody to get shots. So you're going to need to make that decision. So you could see them, if they're smart about this, making a trade this offseason, using a Chris LeVert or a Spencer Dinwiddie, trying to see if they can accumulate pieces to help add to the team, to make the team better. And that way, if they were able to bring back a Joe Harris, and then let's say they kept a Spencer Dinwiddie, but they traded to Chris LeVert, now you have your 4 top players who are really good, plus a very good supporting cast, and they'll be obviously challenging for a championship next year as well. Obviously, the Miami Heat, after making it to the finals this year, and like I said, Tyler Hero's getting better. Bam Adebayo's getting better. Kendrick Nunn is getting better. You expect Duncan Robinson to still be a great 3-point shooter. They still look like a team who if they play like they know how to play, if Jimmy Butler continues to play at this level, could make it back to the championship. To me, people are going to sit here and say, oh, it's the bubble, but Miami has a very sustainable way of playing. The way they play is very sustainable. And so you definitely do not want to count these guys out, because these guys will come out and shock the world if they have to. They didn't make it to the finals on a fluke. This was not a fluke finals appearance. This was not a fluke finals opportunity. They worked their butts off. They played well together as a team. They made plays, they made shots, and then they got to the position where they are. Something you can't take that away from them. You can't take that away from them at all. So, definitely a team that, to me, could be a title contender. Milwaukee Bucks. Obviously a team that we don't know what they're going to look like next year. You know, Giannis obviously is on his vacation, but the offseason is here. And the Bucks front office is on the clock. Giannis wants to stay with Milwaukee. He really wants, like he is a guy I can tell he wants to stay so bad. He wants to be a part of this franchise. He wants to bring them a championship. But at the same time, he also understands if they're not going to put me in the best position to win, I have to consider leaving. That's why he had that meeting with the owner. Because he said, listen, if y'all ain't going to be willing to spend and make these adjustments to the roster, I'm going to have to pack my bags and leave. And obviously, if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, you don't want your best player leaving. So depending on how they fill the team out next year, with Giannis, clearly they're going to be a top 4 seed, probably top 3. They're going to be in position to be a top team in the Eastern Conference. Giannis is still going to probably get his numbers. And so you can clearly tell he's going to be put in position to be successful. And so I expect Milwaukee to still be in there, still be in the running. Can't count them out. They're also the Boston Celtics. Boston Celtics, to me, remember, they're 2 games away from making the Eastern Conference Finals. They still have a superstar in Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Gordon Hayward, Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker obviously did not play as well as he wanted to, but they still have the talent. The biggest thing for the Celtics, I talked about this when they were eliminated, the Boston Celtics don't have a bench or any big men that are like quality. Like I told you, you were having the Celtics team pages, not like the official Twitter or anything like that. They couldn't say something. But page, you know, we all have that sports page that follows our favorite team, that covers our favorite team basically. And he said, listen, our big men would be third strings on most teams, and we have no bench. But everything is on Tatum, on Brown, on Smart, on Hayward, on Walker. If they don't play well, we lose against the best teams. Danny Ainge has to fill out this team in a way where they're going to have enough talent and depth where they can still get production from the bench. Like I said, it reminds me of the Wizards from years ago, where it was all on Gortat, Nene, and Wall, and Beal to score because the bench would barely give them much of anything. And so it put all of the pressure on the starters to basically score points. And you don't want that type of pressure on your team. You want to know that everybody can contribute. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing for Boston, is to make sure they find guys who can help them contribute to what they're trying to do. And then another team, even though y'all might look at this as maybe a distant championship contender, the Toronto Raptors, to me, are a team that I believe, you know, they were a game away from making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. They play, or Nick Nurse maximizes the most out of those guys. And I think that they have a chance to still be in the running. Like, is there a distant championship contender? But if maybe they make some moves this offseason, depending on how the team looks next year, they could be in that running. And then the last team I want to get to, the Denver Nuggets. I really think Denver Nuggets, I always have told y'all, if Michael Porter Jr. develops into that third consistent star, you have 3 stars. You see Joker is probably one of the best centers, and not the best center in the league. Murray is one of the best scoring guards in the league. If Porter can become that guy, he can become that. He has the talent to be. Denver's going to be in it next year. They're going to be highly competitive and in the running next year. And if they do that, you better watch out, because Denver could be coming. So those are my championship contenders for next year, in my opinion. But that's all the time we have here on this segment. Coming up next, we're going to get into some more basketball discussion right here on the GSMC Basketball Podcast.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment we discussed teams that I see as potential championship contenders. Discussed probably about a good solid 8 to 9, 10 teams. And just discuss why I think they could be in title contention next year. Because there's a lot of teams I think that have the talent to show from this year to compete. And I think, obviously not all of them is going to be in position to actually get to the championship. So someone's going to have a down year. Someone's not going to reach expectations. That's just a part of the basketball landscape. But definitely think there are teams with potential who could potentially make something happen, make something shake, and then make something crazy happen, which then results in victories and championships for that resulting team, with obviously the Lakers coming back trying to defend their title next year with LeBron and AD back at the helm. We'll see how the rest of their team is, filled out, and, we'll go from there. I want to get into some news real quick before we get into some other stuff. First, I want to talk about the Knicks. Obviously, the Knicks have been making a lot of draft news. Obviously, not getting a top 3 pick, getting a low pick in a draft that a lot of people don't consider to be that great. They say the Knicks actually may be looking now in a report to trade down to try to accumulate some picks potentially. I don't know how much value that's going to potentially have, but they're seriously considering it. And listen, they want one of the top 3 players in this draft. They're going to see if there's any possible way they can get into the top 3 to get one of those guys. But it doesn't look like it. If anything, conversations have basically been, if they did decide to trade down, they'll probably be between 12 and 15 for the most part, which is Sacramento, New Orleans, Boston, or Orlando. So we'll have to see. Now, if they do keep the pick, a report says they're eyeing guard Tyrese Maxey of Kentucky. And that's because of his connection to newly hired Knicks assistant coach Kenny Payne, who was also at Kentucky when he was there. So, if you're the Knicks faithful, you don't know how to take or what to think about what's coming your way, with everything that's happening, and with everything that is, transpiring right now. I definitely don't think you should have your head down. I think you should definitely have your head up, actually. And I think that you need to, try to stay positive, because obviously the Knicks understand where they are right now. As a franchise, they understand they're not in the best position. They understand that now they're not looking too good. And people are interested to see where this team goes. With new front office, new coach, with Tom Thibodeau. And I guess it'll just be interesting to see what the Knicks can do, even though the NBA is better, obviously, with the Knicks being a actually decent team. But a lot of people are expecting the Knicks to be a team that's probably at the bottom of the barrel once again next year. So we'll have to see what happens with the Knicks from that perspective. Like I said, they don't obviously want to be there, but they may have no choice but to be there. So we'll have to see. Obviously, the draft is coming up. It's about a month from now. So it's around the corner. It's around the corner. And with the season ending That's where most of the focus is going to shift, towards the draft. A lot of news is going to come out about, obviously the next couple of months will be more about teams and retaining free agents, what players are saying, if they want to leave, if they want to go, who teams are viewing, who could trade up, who could try to get into that top 3. Just stuff like that for the most part. Obviously, when November hits, you'll probably hear more legitimate free agency news. And that's pretty much the gist of it. Because here's the thing. Normal NBA offseason, let's say the finals ends in June, you wouldn't play again until October. So all of this would happen over about end of June, July, August, September, 4 to 5 months, basically. 5 months, really. Now, the season could start in 3 months. And the free agency season 2 months. And the draft's in a month. So, each month, something new is happening. A new layer is being unveiled. And we're going to see where that takes us going into the future. Also, I want to get into a particular player right now. Actually, yeah, we're going to get to a particular player right now. Demar Derozan, I think. Not a lot of people talked about him. He's a good player. Obviously, he's more of a Jimmy Butler-esque type player, guy who can't really shoot the 3 that well and doesn't take a lot, but his mid-range game is one of the best in the league. A good player, a little bit older, but still good, still a quality player. Some people really think that this offseason the Spurs are going to be rebuilding. They're going to make changes. They're going to try to, reshape this team, because after missing the playoffs for the first time in 20 years, or 23 years, I believe, they're going to make some changes. Changes are going to have to be made. And so there's going to be that question of what changes will be made. What changes will commence. And so we'll have to see. Obviously, DeMar DeRozan is a guy I think will have some trade value. Obviously, he's not going to get you any top flight packages back in return. But he's a guy who's a quality player who could really help maybe potentially a championship team. I think that he'll help any team. We've always been talking about the Lakers still looking to improve their roster with a third guy. People have connected them to Bradley Beal. I've connected them to Victor Oladipo if he wants out. And I think you can even throw DeMar DeRozan in there. DeMar DeRozan might be someone who fits what they do, because you got LeBron who can kind of do it all. You got AD who dominates in the paint, so you got that middle of the court. Because LeBron really doesn't take a lot of mid-range shots. So you can have that middle of the floor and let DeMar DeRozan, kind of linger around the midpoint of the court in the mid-range part and let him do his thing. So it's kind of one of those things where it'll be interesting to see, how things kind of turn out, how things go, how things are, continue to move forward. Just a potential option out there for DeMar DeRozan, but I'm sure other teams are going to be interested. Another guy who could be on the trading block potentially could be Russell Westbrook, which wouldn't be good to see him get traded after being traded from Oklahoma City. But with whoever comes in as the new Houston head coach might look at this team and say, Russell might not fit what I want to do. He didn't fit what Mike D'Antoni wanted to do. He didn't. And I feel like that's what the limitation was with Mike D'Antoni this season. Whoever they bring in is probably going to want more of a traditional team, obviously a traditional offense. And you're going to have to ask yourself, does Russell fit? Because a lot of people say that he's one of the one players in the league that doesn't fit in at a lot of places, doesn't fit in with a lot of teams. And so that question is out there, is he a fit with any team? So I think he's someone that if whoever comes in as the new guy in Houston, if he talked to Daryl Morey, he might say, hey, we need some big men. Like, really, that's the thing. Houston needs big guys. Remember, they let everybody go. They traded Clint Bell to Atlanta. They might have to say, hey, we got plenty of guards. We got Covington, Eric, James, Austin, PJ. Listen, we've gotten the closest with that core, except Covington in that. But we've gotten the closest with a core like that. We need big men. We can probably trade Russell for a quality big guy. And now we have an established guy who can help run the type of offense they want to run. And the Houston could be a better team because of it. It's just something I'm throwing out there. You never know, because Houston does need some big men. You don't want to rule something like that out. Another person that somebody said would they potentially be traded, Paul George. Now, I don't see Paul George being moved. I think the Clippers are going to run it back. I think Steve Ballmer wants to see what this team looks like with a new head coach. Obviously, knowing that this may be the last year Kawhi and Paul George even in LA after 2 years, because they can opt out after next season. So, on top of that as well, it would be difficult to try to trade one of them, because it's the same situation with Paul George when he went to Oklahoma City. You don't know if he's going to stay at the end of the year. And you don't want to potentially mortgage your future for a player that you don't even know if is going to stick around. Obviously, people have talked about him potentially being on the market. I don't see it. I think, like I said, they're going to run it back. Biggest thing for the Clippers. And their biggest offseason, question mark is just, are they going to bring back Montrezl Harrell? I think that's going to be their biggest question. Is Montrezl Harrell going to be back with the Clippers next year? He's their biggest free agent. Obviously, they have a couple other guys they need to re-sign, but he's the guy that probably everybody's going to look at and say, oh, is he going to be back for the team? So that's going to be a big one. And, with trades in the NBA, it's one of those things where with the draft not being as good as it usually is, especially in a year like this, draft picks outside the top 3 don't hold much meaning at all. So you could accumulate a draft pick and people are just looking at that like, that's just a bag of chips. We don't want a bag of chips. So trades, I think, would also be harder to come by. So you're going to have to maybe see a lot of, if you do see trades this offseason, with a Victor Oladipo, a Bradley Beal, DeMar DeRozan, guys like that, Russell Westbrook, you're probably going to see serious player compensation because people are going to try to get their teams right, because a lot of people are going to probably come into next year. You thought this year was wide open. Next year is going to feel like it's even more wide open in the NBA. And teams are all these teams are going to feel like they have a chance to win. And so they're all going to try to get a team accumulated, try to find the right guys, the right pieces for their team to try to make that push again, to dethrone the Lakers and potentially be the new champions of the NBA. Everybody's going to be rushing and scrambling to be better than what they were the previous year. And that's going to be the thing moving forward. That's going to be big for everybody. So we'll have to see. Obviously, like I said, also another guy, quickly, Chris LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie. That's a big decision for the Brooklyn Nets. Like I've said, they have to just figure out which one are they going to keep. Because they're not going to. It probably wouldn't work best for the system to keep both unless Steve Nash feels like he can keep both. But they're probably going to have to move one. And then, trust me, they can get some decent compensation back for either one of those players and improve their roster. So I think they'll be in good shape moving forward. I think they'll be good to go. So, those are just some players that could potentially be on the move. And you might have to look into, as maybe on your favorite team, to see, hey, is this a guy maybe we want to go after? Is he a guy who can maybe improve our team? So we'll have to see how that goes. But that's all the time we have here on the podcast. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Don't forget to listen to other big podcasts on the GSMC Podcast Network. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Do not forget to subscribe. Definitely subscribe. Subscribe, leave a review. We definitely appreciate it. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at GSMC_basketball to talk about all things basketball. We love to, have some fun on there as well, and all sorts of that. So, this is your host, Brice, signing off once again saying, have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.